When the lights come on, everybody screaming, lighters in the sky, and everybody singing every word to every song of the girl that's taking home tonight. When the lights come on, everybody's feeling a hallelujah high.
You know, as you get older and the years start to go by faster and faster. I was just thinking about this the other day when I had to write the date, or it was yesterday, I had to write the date down on the thing coming into the country. And it was like, I had to think for it, I was like 2018, right?
It's 2018, it is.
It's like they just start going back.
We can confirm
yes.
It is 2018.
As far as we know. Got our research department looking into it. We leave it as 2018. Good morning. It's Monday, in case you couldn't tell. You're watching Fox and Friends First on this Monday morning. I'm Rob Schmidt.
And I'm Jillian Neely, in for Heather Childers. Thanks so much for starting your day with us. We begin with a Fox News alert and a possible new clue in the search for missing Iowa College student Molly Tibbetts. A neighbor exclusively telling Fox News she saw a suspicious black SUV slowly circling the neighborhood where Tibbetts' boyfriend lived and where Molly was staying the night she vanished.
Well, so far the FBI has not commented on that, but they have questioned Iowa hog farmer Wayne Cheney for a third time. Cheney lives just miles away from where Tibbetts was last seen. Now, he claims he does not know Molly. He's allowed police to search his property and his personal phone, but refused to take a polygraph test. Molly disappeared more than 2 weeks ago after going for a run in Brooklyn, Iowa. We, of course, will keep you posted any new developments that come in. All right, a violent and a bloody weekend in Chicago between Friday and Sunday. 63 people were shot in that city. 9 of those victims have died. One of them, a 17-year-old boy who was just riding his bike. 34 of those 63 were shot between Saturday and Sunday morning alone. That is a huge number. And 25 people were wounded within 2.5 hours, 2.5-hour period. A paramedic at the scene describing it as a war zone. Chicago police say most of the shootings were targeted and related to gang violence, with gunmen opening fire in large crowds. Jill.
Countdown to a possible sit-down. The Trump legal team getting closer to a decision on whether the president will meet with special counsel Robert Mueller. Griff Jenkins is live in Washington with the latest on the 16-month-long Russia probe. Good morning, Griff.
Good morning, Jillian. The president's team is indicating that a decision on a possible interview could be forthcoming, according to some reports, possibly a matter of days. The president, according to his lawyers, wants to do an interview, but his legal team has concerns as the two sides try to negotiate over the number and scope of questions. And the president's frustration over the investigation is very clear. You remember he tweeted last week about ending it, and yesterday he raised eyebrows with this tweet denying any knowledge of the 2016 Trump Tower meeting, saying fake news reporting, a complete fabrication, that I am concerned about the meeting my wonderful son Donald had in Trump Tower. This was a meeting to get information on an opponent, totally legal and all done all the time in politics, and it went nowhere. I did not know about it. Now, that tweet seemingly contradicts statements made by the president's attorney, Jay Sekulow, from a year earlier, who had this to say yesterday.
I had bad information at that time. I made a mistake in my statement. I've talked about that before. That happens when you have cases like this. I think it's very important to point out that in a situation like this, you have, over time, facts develop. That's what investigations do. I agree. Go on.
Meanwhile, Democrats like Adam Schiff continue to accuse the president of collusion with the Russians and suggested it will be a factor in November.
As long as the Russians interfere on Donald Trump's side in the midterms, Vladimir Putin can count on the president to never call him out. I think there's plenty of evidence of collusion or conspiracy in plain sight.
Now, the president is in Bedminster, New Jersey on what the White House is calling a working vacation. He has no public events. So, Jillian, if we hear anything else, it will likely come in the form of a tweet.
Of course it will. Thank you very much, Griff. 6 people now arrested in Venezuela after an alleged drone attack on President Maduro. New video has emerged of what Maduro has called an assassination attempt. Drones reportedly packed with explosives, as you could see, exploding as Maduro spoke during a military parade in the socialist country. He later said a group of terrorists and assassins were detained. Some firefighters on the ground said the blast was merely a gas explosion at a nearby apartment building.
All right, rescuers scouring through rubble at this hour in search of survivors after a massive earthquake rocks Indonesia. The pure panic is caught on camera. See the moment there, people getting really nervous. At least 91 people are feared dead, hundreds more injured after the magnitude 7.0 quake. Thousands of buildings have been damaged. This comes just a week after another earthquake there killed 16 people in the same part of that island nation.
At least 20 people hauled away in handcuffs as dueling protests erupt in Berkeley, California. Brian Yennis has the latest on the effort to restore order.
Dueling political protests take over Berkeley, California. Police arriving in force, many officers dressed in riot gear, trying to prevent a repeat of last year's demonstrations that descended into chaos. The right-wing No to Marxism rally was countered by the leftist Stop the Hate rally. One of those counter-protesters says both groups want change, so there should have been a way to find common ground.
It's just heart-wrenching when we can't come together as community.
Several people taken away in handcuffs. Police also releasing these photos showing some of the weapons seized at the rally.
We've seen like wooden shields, we've seen metal pipes, we've seen sledgehammers, we've seen metal poles. These are some weapons that could cause some serious damage.
Meantime, Portland is dealing with fallout from its own political rallies. Clashes erupted when two opposing political groups met downtown Saturday. Right-wing demonstrators and leftist counter-protesters. Police mostly kept to the sidelines until rocks and bottles were thrown, prompting officers in riot gear to fire flashbangs into the crowds. Portland police are now accused of using excessive force. The claims are coming from counter-protesters, some of whom were injured. Portland's police chief has ordered an investigation to determine if any physical force was not within department policy and training guidelines. Several people were arrested and multiple weapons seized in Portland. Berkeley city officials stressed neither political group secured a permit ahead of the demonstration. Brian Yennis, Fox News.
Cross-examination begins today in the Paul Manafort trial, which could see testimony from his right-hand man, Rick Gates. Manafort, the former Trump campaign chairman, faces tax and bank fraud charges as his trial enters its second week. Gates was Manafort's longtime deputy and a co-defendant until he took a plea deal. His testimony is expected to take several days.
Candidates making their final pitch to voters before tomorrow's special election in Ohio. Polls showing a dead heat between GOP State Senator Troy Balderson and Democrat Danny O'Connor in a historically Republican district. President Trump rallying for Balderson in the Buckeye State, hoping to push him across tomorrow's finish line.
Well, Charlotte Rae, the actress best known for her role as the beloved Mrs. Garrett on the long-running NBC sitcom The Facts of Life, has died.
I gotta get going. I gotta make the bed, vacuum the rug, do the laundry, scrub the floors, clean the windows. Everything's gotta be perfect.
Her family says she died peacefully in her home in Los Angeles. The cause of death not yet released, but in April of last year, she revealed she had been diagnosed with bone cancer.
The two-time Tony nominee and Emmy nominee rose to stardom in the Facts of Life spinoff, Different Strokes, in 1978. Rae was 92 years old.
It is 9 minutes after the hour. Maximum pressure. First, North Korea, now Iran.
The Iran deal is one of the worst deals I've ever seen negotiated of any kind.
The president doing something today to turn up the heat, while our next guest says the ripple effect will buckle Iran.
And Elizabeth Warren, 2020, the big hint that she just dropped about her plans to run for president. Stay tuned. All right, the first round of major sanctions against Iran, which had been suspended under the Obama administration's nuclear deal, will be reimposed today.
The 2015 deal, one President Trump has repeatedly labeled as one of the worst deals ever negotiated.
The Iran deal is one of the worst deals I've ever seen negotiated of any kind. $1.2 $7 billion in cash. And they didn't use that for terror. They put that in their Swiss accounts. I guarantee you that.
Last week, President Trump said he is willing to meet with the leadership of Iran without any preconditions, but Iran is snubbing the offer.
So what do today's sanctions mean to businesses, European allies, and to the nation of Iran itself? Here now is former intelligence officer and Iraq war veteran Don Bramer. Don, thanks for coming on this morning. It certainly appears bribing Iran to be nice didn't work so well. We're going to try strangling them now. What do you think of this plan?
Well, you're exactly right. The $1.7 billion did not go back to the Iranian people. It went to funding operations in Syria. It went to funding operations in Yemen, while the Iranian people have been suffering. The rial is worthless at this point, and if you can see, the Iranian people are upset about it. And this time, you know, we don't see them burning effigies of the U.S. flag. We see them saying down with the dictator because they know their government is corrupt. You know, the president was right. It's going into the bank accounts of the mullahs, and right now, you know, we've got to bring Iran to the table, and I think this is the only way. Nice did not work, so we've got to be tough.
Let's take a look here, the 90-day wind-down period that ends today, and that includes sanctioned transactions with U.S. dollar banknotes, trade in gold and precious metals, direct or indirect sales of graphite, raw or semi-finished metals, Iran's automotive sector. Out of this, what do you see as the biggest thing, the most important?
Well, I think banking is going to be the big thing, precious metals. But if you look at the things that affect the Iranian people, it's automotive parts. You know, if the parts to get their trucks and their businesses working are too expensive for the Iranian people to afford, their businesses, their economies cripple. And I think that's what has everyone upset in Iran because, you know, it's going to the lower class, the middle class. The people who actually supported this regime and put it in place are now the ones suffering.
Yeah, talk about how rough this deal was from the get-go, because a lot of people will think that this is just politicized, but this has some bipartisan support. You heard a lot of words from Joe Lieberman over the weekend. Chuck Schumer didn't vote for this deal, called it horrendous, hated the fact that you had to wait 24 hours to see what Iran was up to. That waiting period was troubling to a lot of people. This really was a very weak-handed deal on our end, wasn't it?
It was a horrible deal, and if you'll remember, you're exactly right. Back in 2015, a majority of Congress was totally upset by this deal and upset with the administration. Just think of all that cash that got spread around Iran, but not to the people itself. You know, I think the only people who prospered from this were China, were Russia, were France, the people who were doing business with Iran. And now, without the United States, I think the deal will eventually fail.
To use Rob's term, strangled, do you see them getting strangled even worse down the road?
Well, the rial, like I said, is worthless. And if Iran does the right thing and listens to its people, they're going to come to the table. You know, yes, the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard came forward and said, you know, there's no deal. We're ready for the United States. But what we haven't heard is anything from the president, from the supreme leader. They're keeping quiet right now. And I think if you look at internal voices inside the Iranian regime, there could be a movement to come to the table and talk.
Okay, we'll see, and maybe we'll see a revolution there as well. Let's move to North Korea, and we have somewhat of a similar situation. Another country that just doesn't like to behave. What's the update on that? As we try to make this deal happen, are we being played by the North Koreans?
I don't think it's a fact of being played. You know, let's look at the good that's happened here. We have 55 remains of our fallen that's coming home. We've had no missile tests since the summit. We've had no exercises. This is going to take a lot of time. You know, for some reason, we're infatuated on the fact that we want this to happen overnight. You know, while there's going to be jabs back and forth, we're talking, we're going to the table. You know, Kim sent a letter to the president saying we're looking forward to another meeting. Secretary Pompeo delivered a letter himself to North Korea's foreign minister. It's going to take slow steps, and we have to be patient. You know, one good example, the armistice just 65 years ago took 2.5 years, 188 meetings. So put that in perspective of where we're going here. And I have to say, a year ago, if you look at where we are today, we're in much better shape.
Yeah, I mean, there are reports that they are still building missiles out there. So we'll, of course, see as time goes on. Thank you for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
18 minutes after the hour, Twitter shuts down conservative Candace Owens for doing exactly the same thing that a liberal pundit did. the double standard that is now sparking a firestorm.
And Demi Lovato breaks her silence for the very first time since her overdose. Carly Shimkus here live with a message to her fans and her admission about the addiction. Good morning and welcome back. Demi Lovato breaking her silence for the first time following her apparent overdose.
Carly Shimkus with Fox News Headlines 24/7, Sirius XM 115 is here with reaction to the pop star's message this morning. Hey, Carly.
Hey, good morning, guys. Lovato says she is focused on her sobriety and road to recovery. The singer breaking her silence in an Instagram post nearly 2 weeks after being rushed to the hospital, saying, "I want to thank God for keeping me alive and well. To my fans, I am forever grateful for all of your love and support throughout this week and beyond. I will keep fighting." So that post racking up about 4.5 million likes on Instagram. Countless supportive messages as well. Edgar on Twitter saying, "Hope she gets the help she needs. No one is perfect." Nick also chiming in saying, "One day at a time, wishing you the best." And Dana also tweeting, "Keep fighting, Demi. It's so hard, but you can do it. Stay strong. We are praying for you." Now, Lovato was reportedly rushed to the hospital after being treated with the opioid reversal drug Narcan.
Lucky to be alive, yeah. Let's talk about 2020. We could see a whole slew of candidates from the Democrats, including maybe Elizabeth Warren, huh?
Well, the former Vice President Joe Biden, he is the early favorite to take on President Trump in 2020. But Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren is fueling speculation that she, too, might be interested after delivering this stump-style speech. Take a listen.
It won't be easy. We're going to have to fight uphill. But me, I'm going up that hill, and I hope you are too.
Warren also saying she has never been afraid to be an underdog. That's the phrase that everybody's focusing on this morning. Kevin on Twitter saying, "Not afraid to be the underdog, afraid to, take a DNA test." Francis says, "I hope she does. President Trump would do very well." And Kathy saying, "No, sorry. If you want to win, find someone fresh, not Warren or Sanders. We're over it." So already talking about 2020. We've been talking about 2020 since 2016 now.
Yeah, seriously. I've always been fascinated by identical twins, and now you have identical twins marrying identical twins.
Are you ready to see double, guys? Because identical twin brothers married identical twin sisters at the Twins Day Fair in Twinsbury, Ohio. Now, that is not all. The couple got married by identical twin ministers in a ceremony themed Twice Upon a Time. Look at that. So Brittany and Brianna Slayers, they say that it's been their lifelong dream to marry twins. They met their Prince Charmings at the Twins Day Fair last year. There's going to be a show about their marriage as well. And my big question is, when they have kids, do you think that they're going to look exactly alike?
Oh, that is a good question.
There's a lot of other creepy thoughts that just pour into your mind when you see a story like that.
Just
don't tell us.
Well, congratulations to them.
I've learned what to say and what not to say on TV. But Charlie, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
See ya.
It's just a weird thing, isn't it? It's kind of weird. All right, 25 minutes after the hour, forget the blue wave. The president is predicting a sea of red in November. A Democrat who says not so fast, and a Republican who says that the liberals have no plan. Go head-to-head on that coming up next.
And after signing off for the very last time, this police officer gets the surprise of a lifetime.
It is my honor to acknowledge this Code 5, to set free a man who has sacrificed so much of his time for all of us.
Who was on the other end of that radio? Stick around. We'll tell you. Investigators are looking into Islamic extremism after 11 children were rescued from a filthy compound in New Mexico. You can see it there. The kids between the ages of 1 and 15 were removed after an armed standoff with one of the men who stayed there. The 39-year-old, now behind bars, was originally wanted for kidnapping his 3-year-old son from Georgia. That child has not been found. Another man has also been arrested. Conditions at the remote property compared to a third world country. The sheriff's said the FBI believes the men had extreme Islamic beliefs. The son of Osama bin Laden, now married to the daughter of a 9/11 hijacker. The family of the dead terror leader telling The Guardian 29-year-old Hamza bin Laden married Muhammad Atta's daughter. Atta flew a plane into the World Trade Center in 2001, killing thousands of Americans. The families say Hamza is now an al-Qaeda leader himself and vows to avenge his father's death.
Investigators looking for answers after a freight train derails, crashing right onto commuter tracks. 7 cars going off the tracks in Pittsburgh, sending containers tumbling, filled with household items and also food. Nobody was hurt, but witnesses say the crash was like an earthquake. The tracks are severely damaged, and there's no word on when service will be restored there in Pittsburgh. Five people are dead after a plane crashes in a California mall parking lot. Dash cam video showing the moments that plane heading to the John Wayne Airport just south of L.A. came spiraling down. You can see it there. The pilot declared an emergency just before the crash. The cause is under investigation. The victims have not yet been identified. Thankfully, nobody in that parking lot was hurt. President Trump's legal team inching closer to a decision on whether or not the president will sit down with special counsel Robert Mueller. This as his attorney fires back after a mix-up regarding Donald Trump Jr.'s meeting with several Russians at Trump Tower who claimed to have dirt on Hillary Clinton. Jay Sekulow had denied the president had a role in drafting a response to that 2016 meeting. He now says he made a mistake after President Trump tweeted about it yesterday.
I had bad information at that time. I made a mistake in my statement. I've talked about that before. That happens when you have cases like this. I think it's very important to point out that in a situation like this, you have, over time, facts develop. That's what investigations do.
As for the Bob Mueller meeting, Trump lawyer Rudy Giuliani says a decision will be made by this Sunday. John Bolton slamming what he calls the media's false disconnect narrative on the handling of Russian election meddling. The national security advisor clarifying that the president has full confidence in the intelligence community, despite reports that he is not taking it seriously and concerns over the president's statements calling the Russia investigation a hoax.
The president knew exactly what was going to be said at that press briefing on Thursday. He's the one who directed it be held. Everybody who participated in the press conference Thursday agreed, as has the president on several public occasions, that the intelligence community assessment of Russian meddling in 2016 is valid.
Bolton also says the president's use of the phrase Russian hoax is specifically referring to accusations that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia to win the White House. Election meddling on the minds of many, with midterms fast approaching here in a few months. New York Congressman Peter King says there is no doubt that Russia will try to interfere, but he says that President Trump is doing more to prevent meddling than President Obama ever did.
The main thing we have to do is convince Russia that there's a deterrent, that if they try this, there's going to be consequences. Because if we're just playing defense, somehow or other they can get through. But if they know there's going to be a massive retaliation, that's the best way to keep them from doing it. President Obama didn't do that. He went over to Putin in, I guess, September of 2016 and said, knock it off. Well, Putin did knock it off, and the president didn't do anything until right before he left office. There has to be a strong deterrent, and we have the capacity to carry out a deterrent.
Yeah.
Well, the midterms are now less than 100 days away.
President Trump taking to Twitter to predict a red wave in the upcoming midterm elections, tweeting, quote, presidential approval numbers are very good, strong economy, military, and just about everything else. Better numbers than Obama at this point by far. We are winning on just about every front, and for that reason, there will not be a blue wave, but there might be a red wave. So, which party has the best strategy to turn the tide? Here to weigh in, our panel, radio talk show host Dr. Gina Loudon and Democratic strategist Antoine Seray. Thank you both for being here this morning. Gina, I will start with you. Do you see a red wave in the near future?
Oh, absolutely. And this president has done such an amazing job as president that he doesn't even need Twitter, as many might disagree at first blush. But think about it. People get this message when they just look at their bank accounts, when they look at their friends and families who have new jobs, when they look at their 401ks. And you contrast that with the Democrats who have no message, no candidates. What are they running on? Open borders, higher crime, higher taxes, socialism, or maybe there's impeaching the president that's brought him the best economy in in their lifetime. How can they possibly win?
Antoine, I have a feeling you don't necessarily agree with that.
Bless your heart, Gina. Here's the bottom line. We know this president has a history of saying things not true. So add this egg to the carton of his things of just simply saying things not true. I call it bojangling around. That's what Donald Trump is known for.
What's not
true? Non-debatable for Gina. What is non-debatable for Gina or any other Republican are a number of things. Number one, Democrats have the enthusiasm gap on their side. 84% versus 24% increase in the Republican primary. What's non-debatable is the fact that up and down the ballot in special elections and other elections across the country, 42 some odd seats have been flipped, and we're winning places that Donald Trump won in the 2016 primary. What is also non-debatable is the simple fact that we are out-registering Republicans going into the 2018 midterms. It is political malpractice for Gina or any other Republican to come on these shows and say that there will be a red wave in November. Moral bankruptcy is at an all-time high. Corruption cups are overflowing because of this president, and the Republican Congress led by this president has failed the American people on putting forth a policy prescription.
Antoine, what is not true? You said the president is saying things that aren't true. I want to know, what are you saying is not true?
Well, name something that Donald Trump has said or done that is true. He said there was no meeting with Russia. We know that's not true.
Antoine, this president has actually delivered on more promises than he actually made. You name a promise that he's made that he hasn't kept. He has been on top of it. This is the best economy in your lifetime. You know, maybe you should run for your party's presidency because they need to keep. Let Gina say this. I think it's important. We have record low unemployment among minorities, including Hispanics, Antoine. We have record low unemployment. We also have record approval for this president among blacks now. His approval among blacks has more than doubled, actually. And so here you are with a great economy, great approval, great enthusiasm, a president who has kept his promises, and I don't know what you're so upset about. Why don't you just vote for him?
Antoine?
Gina, are you drunk off the Kool-Aid this morning saying that I will vote for Donald Trump? The president has failed middle-class working families. The president has sold out his farmers. Now he wants to give them the Stormy Daniels treatment of trying to buy them back. The president who has really put what I call African Americans in front of their face, how he really feels. The president has done zero about the water crisis in Flint, Michigan. The president that has implemented policies that will roll back the clocks of time for people who look like me. And you telling me I should vote for him, Gina? Let's do something.
I'm going to give you a pass today, Antoine, because you got up early this morning.
Let me interject real quick. I'm not sure that it's fair to say that he's necessarily failed middle-class families. I want to get your take on this, Gina, because, you know, you look at Saturday, the fact that the president was in Ohio campaigning out there. When he is with his base,
hold on
a second, Antoine. When he is out in middle America, that's where he is really at his best, it seems, and that's where people really love him.
Right. He did 3 of those rallies this week. This man has more energy, I don't know, than most 21-year-olds, actually. 3 of those this week, and a great job as president, accomplishing some 145 items just in his first 18 months. And that's with very little help, of course, from the establishment in the swamp. So this president doesn't really need the approval of the establishment or of people like Antoine, because he's going to keep getting the job done. He's going to deliver a red tsunami this midterm. You watch.
Well, we do have to go.
Gina,
you guys are fired up this morning. We got to go. Look, I love you guys, but you're all fired up right now. It's a Monday. It's 4:39.
Gina, I do love you.
Thanks, guys.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
All right. There you go.
They are high energy.
Wrangling somehow. 39 minutes after the hour, an Iraqi immigrant with a long criminal history who skirted deportation for 5 years, now charged with shooting a police officer in the head. Former Nashville cop Vincent Hill calling out the system that failed this officer, and also the mainstream media, which he says has turned a blind eye to stories just like this. He joins us live.
Facing the music, a woman kicked off a flight after buying a seat for her $30,000 cello. How the airline is responding to the mid-air musical drama. Good morning to you. Shocking new details about the man who shot a Colorado cop in the head last week.
We just learned Karar Al-Khamasi is an Iraqi immigrant with a long criminal history, including drunk driving, trespassing, and criminal extortion, among even more crimes. Yet this man somehow managed to avoid deportation.
So how could this happen? And is it more proof we need the president's tough talk on open borders? Here now is former Nashville police officer Vincent Hill. Thanks for your time this morning. This one's a tough one for a lot of people to swallow.
Absolutely, Jillian, and thanks for having me, and good morning to you and Rob as well. Have you noticed that when President Trump supports something, the mainstream media and the left oppose it? For instance, he supports immigration, tough immigration on illegal immigrants that are committing crimes, but yet they call them racist. He supports vetting people coming into this country, but yet they call him racist, much like they do the police in this country. So here we are yet again dealing with another brother in blue who was shot in the head like a sheep in a slaughterhouse because of this ideology that the left is preaching. Now, keep in mind, this left that tells people, well, let's go out and attack Trump supporters. Now, police get associated with President Trump for whatever reason. So it's no wonder we're in this situation. 35 officers this year shot in the line of duty. It's unacceptable, Jillian.
You know, Vincent, when you see the rhetoric coming from, and what we should say is the very far left of the Democratic Party, talking about open borders, and then you see stories like this, do we need an even stricter, for even legal immigration, and even stricter policy regarding the behavior of people that come into this country? If you come here from another country and you go on a crime spree, if you're arrested a number of times, you get kicked out. Maybe a higher standard for the types of people we bring in here.
Well, Rob, I would say to that question, just ask the family of that officer in Colorado. I'm sure they're probably thinking the same thing. I mean, this guy for 5+ years was being arrested. He should have been deported. We had a lax immigration policy of the previous administration. This entire thing could have been prevented had we had tougher immigration laws on illegal immigrants that are here committing crimes. Unfortunately, we didn't, and this is the result of it.
Let's take a look at some numbers here. The number of police officers killed in the line of duty from non-accidental gunfire. As of July 28, 2018, there have been 34. Look at that compared to 22 in 2017 and 26 in 2016. That is a distinct difference in those numbers so far this year, and it is only August at this point. Those numbers go through the end of July. What do those numbers tell you?
It tells me that, unfortunately, Jillian, we haven't seen the last of this. We still have several months in this year to go, but we still have the mainstream media not covering stories like this. But let me flip gears here. And had this individual been affected by President Trump's travel ban, oh my gosh, the mainstream media would be in uproar and pointing the finger at President Trump. But this officer shot, and no one's saying a word about it. That is very disturbing that we live in this country, and that's acceptable.
And you say that there's not enough media coverage of stories like this. The media is turning a blind eye to these types of stories.
Absolutely, they're turning a blind eye. But, you know, had this officer had to use deadly force, we would hear about it in the mainstream media. This officer shot in the head doesn't really make a hill of beans to the mainstream media. It's sad.
Vincent, thank you so much. We do appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right.
Mortgage mess. Hundreds of people losing their homes, all because of a computer glitch.
That sounds unbelievable. Tracy Carrasco from our sister network, Fox Business, here to explain exactly how this is even possible. Tracy.
Good morning. Yes, this really is outrageous, but Wells Fargo admitted that it was a, quote, calculation error that may have led to as many as 400 homeowners needlessly losing their homes to foreclosure. Now, Wells Fargo revealed this in a regulatory filing that the mistake in a mortgage modification tool wrongly factored in lawyers' fees into the formula from the government to determine if a homeowner would qualify for a federally backed program. So the bank said as a result of this error, about 625 customers were, quote, incorrectly denied a loan modification, with about 400 of them losing their home. So Wells Fargo said they're very sorry about this. They've set aside about $8 million in the second quarter to fix this problem, but that only works out to about $20,000 a homeowner. So hopefully they will do more. We've seen so many issues with Wells Fargo lately.
Yeah, it's more bad press for them, especially in the mortgage department. All right.
All right, we've got a leak. What is this one?
Yeah, so the new Galaxy Note 9 from Samsung, that will be unveiled later this week. Officially unveiled, but we're getting a little hint that this will be Samsung's first phone to support 1 terabyte of flash memory, which is a big deal because that is huge. So the Note 9 will have 512 gigabytes of a built-in memory, as well as support for 512 gigabytes of a micro SD card. So there's really no other Samsung device that has this. If you look at the iPhone, they don't have that much memory as well. So this could mean some major competition for Apple on the iPhone. We will see.
Interesting.
Yes.
It's probably the size of a flat screen TV.
Yeah. An iPad.
Phones just get bigger and bigger and bigger. All right.
I'm not going to complain about that, though. I kind of like it.
Thanks, Tracy. Thanks.
48 minutes after the hour, Candace Owens slamming Twitter's double standard after the social media site locked out the conservative for calling out racist tweets.
What Twitter has to say for itself, that's coming up next.
Is it too late now to say sorry? Yeah, I know that I let you down.